I'd rather create something that others criticise than create nothing and criticise others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. The episode today jumps into wine. We wander into topics like old world versus new world, primary and secondary flavours, decanting, terroir. If it's wine related, we go there today. So sit back and enjoy Carmen's lovely sultry voice as we open up all kinds of complex concepts, winemaking intricacies, and of course, stories, insights, and experiences, including why you should always buy a 2012 South Australian wine. Here's episode 26. Hello, and welcome to the show, Carmen.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No worries at all, no worries at all. Carmen, the way that I like to start every episode is by asking if you have a crazy hospitality story.
Which one do you want?
Okay, so a lot of guests jump to like crazy stories of them doing things in the bar. What I want to ask is about patrons, like weird and wonderful things you've seen patrons do, funny, interesting, crazy stuff. So.
The one that stands out in my mind probably the most actually, so it was something that actually happened to me back my very first hospitality job when I was a door girl at Cloudland. Gent walked in initially, lovely as anything. Obviously he'd been inside for a while, he'd had a lot to drink. As he walks back out, he proceeds to grope me. I don't deal well with being touched at the best of times, and so I screamed at the top of my lungs, just yelling, "What are you doing? Don't touch me!" They heard me over at Elixir. But then what actually happened was, so the manager came out, he's like, just go back inside, grab yourself a glass of water from behind the bar. I'm like, yeah, it's totally fine, because I started laughing, realising how ludicrous I actually sounded. So I wander back inside, duck behind the bar, get myself a drink, and then I turn around, and all of a sudden I hear this code red called, and code red in the industry basically means that the shit is going down.
Yeah.
And so I turn around and I see this poor guy's legs just lifted into the air as 5 guards have pile drive this guy into the ground. He ends up getting loaded into the back of a paddy wagon.
Oh, the same guy?
Yeah, same guy.
Wow.
Yeah, he was in there. He was in for a function. He'd obviously had an insane amount to drink. The police asked me, "Do you want to press charges?" I'm like, no. Not at all, because when he came in, he was lovely, but he just made a really bad decision on the way out. And look, frankly, being pile drived out the front of Cloudland by 5 guards is enough. I thought he's got his uppance has come. So yeah,
wow,
that's the one that of the entirety of my time actually stands out in my mind to this day.
Yeah,
I'll never forget.
Oh, I like that story. Thank you very much for sharing it. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have some interesting stories as well, particularly women in the industry. You know, those sorts of things happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is, again, still a very, very prevalent thing, but at the same time, it's across both sexes. It's male and female. It happens to all of us, and I'm sure numerous male bartenders can actually give accounts of, walking through and having the good old cougar that'll just go in and just go for a bit of a grab and then sort of just think about it because, they're women, they can get away with this. So, not really, but yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you for bringing that up as well, because it is a problem with males.
It is.
And we talk a lot more about it with females, and
of course.
I'm not downplaying the issue there as well.
No.
It is a problem for men too, so thank you.
It's both. It's absolutely both. Yeah.
Carmen, the next question I want to ask you is why you do what you do.
I've always sought knowledge. I get bored if I'm not continuously learning something, which is why I am now in the industry that I'm in. I went to uni, I did a horrifyingly difficult degree at university, but then found at the end of it I wasn't gaining anything else from it. But at that point in time, I did biomedical science at uni, but at that point in time I'd actually already been introduced to the hospitality industry, and I found myself then progressing through to management, and then sort of then finding in my last job, where I was the venue manager for grape therapy, revisited my passion of wine, because I grew up around it. I'm from Adelaide, I'm from around McLaren Vale, so I'd rehash that passion for it as well, and I found myself just learning so much more. And then with what I'm doing now, still then continuing that, so obviously doing my study to become a somm, but then what I'm doing now with Vanguard, in the sense that I'm just learning continuously. Like, it's what drives me, because it's just knowledge. I just want to know and soak up as much as I can, and then be able to share that knowledge with everyone else as well, because I want everyone else to be as enthusiastic as I am. You know, when you open up a bottle of red, you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing, and this is why this is amazing. Like, I want everyone else to have that same experience.
And knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So you mentioned wine there. That's what I want this episode to be predominantly about.
Yeah.
And you know that, and we're going to jump right into wine a little bit further into the episode. The first thing I want to touch on is ask you what you're learning about or exploring at the moment. So what is it that you're learning about or pushing things forward with in your own sort of education?
At this point in time, I'm currently studying my level 3 WSETs.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the worldwide qualifications to become a sommelier.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, me directly studying, I have fantastic knowledge of Australian wine, of New World wine, but for me, Old World is a bit of a black spot.
Mm-hmm.
Because I grew up in Australia, you're surrounded by it continuously. But at the moment, I'm trying to learn about France, and I'm having it's completely different, barrel of fish, so to speak, in that sense. And it's been ridiculously challenging for me because your flavour profiles are different. You know, your appellation control is just so completely different. But the absolute enormity of it, I'm still blown away by it. To this day, but that's what I'm really focusing on at the moment. And sort of, if you see me, randomly sitting in a bar, as I do quite frequently, just really giving a confused look at a glass of wine, chances are I've asked the person behind the bar, it's like, just give me anything, I don't care what it is, throw something from overseas in front of me, and I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to like pull this wine apart and try to figure out what the heck I'm actually drinking. That's half the fun of it as well. But I mean, that's what I'm focusing on at the moment, is Old World, predominantly France, just because it's foreign to me. It's just this whole new thing that I've never experienced before.
Yes. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about Old versus New World?
So, Old World obviously being, you're looking more so towards Europe in that sense. So from your origins of wine, so you have a lot more strict appellation control in a sense of what happens over there. So you look, like champagne. Obviously, you use three different varietals depending, but you can only be made in Champagne as opposed to, or Prosecco is actually the best example that I can think of here. If you do a direct comparison between your Old World and your New World, Prosecco and Old World means that it's in the region of Prosecco in Italy. In Australia, that actually means you're using a Prosecco grape. Whereas the Prosecco, in the region of Prosecco, it's a completely different type of grape actually used. Right. So, yeah, and that's the difference, and that's why it's so confusing as well. But you can get an Australian sparkling that is made in the exact same method as champagne, exact same varietals of grapes. Yes. But it's not champagne. Yeah. And so the difference is that in Australia, we name wine after what the actual varietal is, whereas opposed to, and that's your New World. Old World, it's generally named after the region. Okay. It's it messes you around a lot.
It'll help to know that, so you know that you're not going to pick up a glass of wine and hate it.
But that's exactly it. But then the thing is that if you're looking at a region, as opposed to, again, in Australia, it's like, cool, it says Shiraz. It means I'm getting a Shiraz. Fantastic. You get something from overseas, and it's just like, oh, okay, no, this is named after the area. But unless you actually know a little bit about wine, you pick up something from Burgundy, you're not going to know what's in it unless you know a little bit more about wine. And unfortunately, it's just how it is. But again, I find, and on my end, that's what really encouraged me, because I wanted to be able to walk into a bottle shop and not be really confused by what I was looking at.
Because it can be quite daunting if you don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. You'll find that, I mean, if you sort of walk into, a Dan Murphy's or a BWS, generally the people running it aren't going to have as an extensive amount of knowledge, but that's why I love going into small independent bottle shops. Like, I love the guys down at, at Crew Bar, Wine Emporium, because they will happily wine nerd out with you. It's like, cool, I want this, this, and this. And they get as excited as I do. Yeah. And I mean, for anyone who knows me, they know that that's really saying something. Yeah. And they'll stand there and they'll take the time with you. It's like, cool, so this is what this is, this is what this is what flavour this is going to be. But, this vintage is different because of these reasons, and this vintage is different because of these reasons. Like, it's fantastic, and I love experiencing other people like that in the industry as well. But again, that's sort of what drove me to learn more, so I could actually go in, and I love having conversations with these guys about it. I have, particular wine friends that I just love sitting there, and we nerd out, like we wine nerd out, and it's a fantastic thing to do.
Love it.
Yeah.
What does that education actually do for you career-wise? Like, what does it help you to do?
There's a multitude of things that it could do. I mean, a lot of people will set their level of 1 and 2 just because they want to expand their own knowledge. But then generally from level 3 upwards, so you go through to do your diploma after that, and then you can move on to do your Master of Wine. For anyone who has Netflix at home, you ever watch the the episode of Somme, you'll realise how terrifyingly difficult it actually is. Yep. But for me, I have so many different ideas in my mind of what I want to do, but look, 5 years ago, I didn't think that I'd be doing what I was doing now. So I could tell you, A, B, and C, but, it's going to be X, Y, and Z by the end of it. I'd love to be I thought being a group sommelier for particular, high-end restaurants, I think would be lovely, because just the ability to pick that wine list and to have people come in and enjoy that is fantastic. I could be a brand ambassador for Penfolds, for anyone really. And it's sort of, there is such a magnitude of what you can actually do with this. For all I know, I could open up my own wine bar if I really feel like it. Like, I don't know, but it seems like a good direction to go in, so I'm just going to keep going in that direction, and I'm enjoying it. So as long as I'm happy, I'm not fussed what I'm doing.
You have to do what you're passionate about.
That's exactly it.
That's awesome that you're following that.
Yeah.
For people who don't know much about wine, can we give them a really succinct 101 on the process of making wine and actually what happens? I know that it's like
like real bare basic.
I know we're going to condense obviously a lot of information into something very succinct here, and people know, it's like squash grapes, right?
Yeah.
But
stone fruits and tannins,
just do a little bit.
Guys. It's just stone fruits and tannins. It really depends, I guess, what type of wine you're looking at. So, I mean, to go for your bare basics, grapes are grown, obviously, at a particular time of the year, depending on what you're growing. So you'll generally find your whites are picked earlier than your reds, because your red varietals need a little bit more time to actually ripen.
Is that for the sugars as well?
It is.
Yeah.
But again, depending on what type of flavour profile the winemaker's going to go for. So the longer you leave the grapes on, the more sunlight they see, the more sugar that they actually produce. So again, this is going to change the flavour profile of your wine. This is why, say, for example, with something like an Eden Valley Riesling, they do have a tendency, if they're wanting a really, really dry Riesling, to pick earlier. Because it means it's not going to allow the time for those sugars to actually then formulate. So you're going to get a really nice dry Riesling. But again, you're sort of looking at the particular region as well. I mean, you look at an Australian Riesling compared to a German Riesling, like the difference between the two is just insane, because German Rieslings are typically very, very sweet, but they see such an insane amount of sunshine as well. And just the difference between the two, again, this is old world versus new world. People sort of see Riesling as being it's your grandma's old sweet Riesling. It's not like that anymore. Rieslings are really dry, crisp, fresh, but again, that's a new world style. But that's where the start of it is. So it's determined on, what the flavour profile of what the winemaker wants is determined, as to how long they're going to leave it on these vines. Then you pick the grapes as to whether or not they press them or not. All they do is just releasing a little bit of the sugar there, a little bit of the juice, I should say, to get your must, which is your juice. Then it's fermented, so that's when they leave it for a pre-determined amount of time, again depending on what they're making. So if you're making a rosé, do they leave it on the skins, do they not leave it on the skins? And this is, the longer you leave a rosé on the skins, the more colour is going to be coming through. Generally, the sweeter it's going to be. It's the same thing with your reds. So how long are you going to leave this on the skins for determines how much colour is going to come through and things like that as well. And then it really depends which one you're actually doing, because then you look at something like champagne, or you look at sparkling, then you have to actually do you leave it on the lees, which is it's sort of a fancy way of saying the dead bacteria that come through there. Yeah, to put as a brash, this is how you make wine. You pick it, you press it, you ferment it, you bottle it.
Awesome.
I think it's the bare base. Again, if you're wanting specifics, you have to go like, white, red, rosé, sparkling.
Yeah,
like it's all so different.
Awesome. Well, I have a question about aging.
Yeah.
So, what are some generally accepted practices to age wine? I think it was maybe episode 3, we talked about the solarium system. But what are some other ways? Is that the main way, or are there other ways to age wine?
It's depending if you're looking, generally wine won't be aged in barrel. I mean, the except, you know, sort of like your Chardonnays and things like that, but they're leaving it in barrel for a particular amount of time, so you can actually gain those really lovely oaky, buttery flavours. But you're also looking at aging in bottle. So dependent on what type of wine you have, some are meant to be drunk very, very young. So Beaujolais, perfect example. You drink it as young as possible. It's at the third Thursday of every November. Funnily enough, actually just went by last week. Is, you know, the Beaujolais Day, where they do actually release the brand new vintage of Beaujolais, and then you get the World Beaujolais Race, where it's like, cool, let's get this as fast as we can to other places across the world, so you can drink it as fresh and as young as possible.
Nice.
So again, that's supposed to be drunk young. You don't age it. You can, but it's not really recommended. Whereas something like a Shiraz, let's look at Penfolds. Perfect. Penfolds Grange. It's such a big, gutsy, ballsy Shiraz. The whole idea behind it is that you are going to age it. You are going to keep it for a pre-certain amount of time, and it's going to have its pinnacle as to when you drink it or not. And for wine, it's essentially a parabolic curve. You have the absolute peak of where you should drink it, and then it kind of tends to peter off after that, really.
Yep.
But aged in bottle,
Yes.
generally going to be your best. Cool, dark place. Don't let it see any sunlight. Don't let it fluctuate your heat.
Yes.
And especially for those of us who live in Queensland who might not have access to a Vintec, a really dark cupboard somewhere in the middle of the house. So for aging, not so much in barrels. Unless you're sort of looking at sherries and things like that. I mean, some people keep sherries in cask for God knows how long. But predominantly you're wanting to look at bottle aging is going to be your best way of doing it.
With barrels, we mentioned barrels there. There's something that I heard about using fish guts in barrels. Like, is that something that you've heard of?
No, that's a new one.
Because I heard about something with
sounds
fish
awful.
guts, or I was like, it's like that it was a traditional method, and I wanted to ask you about
That's
it.
a new one.
Yeah, maybe I'll explore that a little bit more, because I heard about that and I have no idea.
That's weird.
How it came into play,
I want to know about that too now, actually. No, that's one that I haven't come across yet.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about it because I have no idea how this works, but that's all right.
No, that's a very new one.
I'll go on to the next question for you then, Carmen. Episode 3, we had a question, JD and I think it was JD in episode 3, we had to talk about wine tasting better when it's been decanted.
Yep.
Can you explain why that is?
So that's purely dependent as well on the age of the wine. So while something that is very, very young, sort of within your first couple of years, you don't need to decant. But the whole idea behind it is you are waking up this wine from a very, very long sleep. So over time, the flavour does tend to settle a little bit, so you do need to aerate it, get the oxygen through it to then actually wake up these flavours. And at the same time, depending on how long it's been aged for, so your primary and secondary flavours are going to turn to into your tertiary flavours. So when I say primary and secondary flavours, I'm talking primary flavours are things like, you know, red fruits, stone fruits, like your fresh raspberries and things like that. Then you're sort of heading to your secondary flavours, where you start to get a little bit more of your cooked fruits. And then you're heading to tertiary flavours, and that's when you get things like when you get a really old Shiraz and it tastes like figs, like really, really like your stewed fruits, like your really slow cooked fruits. It's sort of the development of the flavour there. So what you actually need to do, and you can get a little bit of a musty flavour that comes through if you're cracking open, you know, a 20-year-old bottle of wine, and you try a bit of it straight away, you're going to get like a bit of almost a cork taint coming through straight off the bat. So it's almost like it's affectionately described, if you're looking at a tasting palette, as things like forest floor, mushroom and things like that, which are just the wankiest terms. I've had the lovely gent I used to work for, he said that he'd actually once described something as a wetsuit, a rubber wetsuit. Yep.
Yeah.
But if you describe this flavour, I mean, if that's what you're thinking it as, you're going to pick that up again. You're going to taste that same thing again. But again, you need to decant a wine. You need to decant an old wine to wake it up, to make sure that you're getting the aeration through, and you're going to get the flavours that the winemaker had actually intended to come through there initially anyway.
I like that. Yeah. It's about waking it up from this deep sleep.
It is. It's exactly it, because, you know, it has been put to sleep for however many years as well.
You said that the primary flavours become the secondary flavours?
Absolutely.
Is that when you're tasting it? you taste the secondary flavors first, or is that, what
No,
do you
so
mean by that?
when I'm talking primary flavors, so when the bottle is its youngest, and when the wine is its youngest, that's when you're getting your primary flavors, because those are the first, because it's young, it's fresh, it's crisp. It would have, only been in bottle for a short amount of time. But again, it is the general stance of aging. As the wine gets older, the secondary and tertiary characteristics are going to develop over time. You can even get it with things like, and this is really quite a weird one, the Four Pillars Bloody Shiraz gin. It does the same thing, because you're getting those primary flavors initially. It's like really young, really crisp, evolving then into your secondary and tertiary flavors as it gets older. And that's just the natural process of things. Without going into the phenolics of wine,
That's all right.
too insanely, that's exactly what happens.
My next question for you is, this also came up in an earlier episode, but with regards to beer, which is an interesting application of it. Can you tell us a bit about terroir and what it actually is?
How broad do you want to go here?
Because it's a term that people use,
Yep.
and I just want to open up a little bit.
It's
Give us a taste.
Well, I mean, what does terroir mean? It's ground. So it basically gives you a good indication as to what soil type you're putting these plants into, what soil type of these vineyards in, is going to give a massive influence on what the flavour is going to come through. So if you look at somewhere like Limestone Coast, let's take a really logical guess as to maybe what the underlying soil there is, and it's going to give this really, really earthy flavour. And this is just so dominant in things like, so winds of Coonawarra. So Coonawarra and the Limestone Coast are smack bang next to each other. So the flavour profile that you're going to get through from a Cabernet Sauvignon from Coonawarra is going to be completely different to what you're going to get from a Cabernet Sauvignon from Barossa Valley, because they're completely different underlying soils, and it's going to make a huge difference. It's like trying to compare an Eden Valley and a Clare Valley Riesling, right next to each other, but different underlying soils, which is why you get such, and it's why they're considered to be different regions. And somewhere like, there's a particular appellation overseas in Spain called Ribera del Júcar, which was only made an appellation in the early 2000s, despite the fact that, this particular region has been there for years and years. They only then recently discovered that because the actual underlying soils in this area was so vastly different to those that sat smack bang across the bank, they're like, well, we can't classify these in the same appellations anymore. The flavour profile is so different that we need to actually segregate these. And this is continuing to happen. Obviously, because this only happened within the early 2000s, but I mean, that sort of gives you a bit of an idea as to what terroir is. It's going to create look at your so many different ways that you can actually describe this. It's absolutely insane. Even with the granite belt, we get the same thing up here. We get amazing earthy flavours coming through because of the stony underlays that you get there. You get this just fantastic, again, that earthiness that comes through, and that's effectively what you're describing in terms of your terroir. It's just a fancy way of saying, well, this is what it's planted in, so this is what it's going to taste like.
So sort of the character of the particular wine because of the region, the soil?
Everything. People sort of don't understand how many external factors and how many different things go into a wine being a wine. Best example I can think of, if you think of even over in California, places where they have insane amounts of bushfires, you can actually, if you've got a really well-trained palate, you can actually pick particular vintages that have had bushfires, because you can actually get that sort of that smokiness, because if the smoke is sitting over the vineyard, well, that's going to be absorbed into the grapes. Think of Australia again. If you're going to have a bushfire, you're almost going to have a bit of a eucalypt taste there, because if it was eucalypt trees that were burning, well, that's the aromatics that are going to be going over and being absorbed into this grape. So literally every single little thing, if you get rain smack bang before harvest, God forbid, it means that your fruit's going to swell and you're effectively going to be diluting the flavour through. And that's why every single tiny little aspect is actually being taken into account with wine. And that's why, good vintages are just few and far between. It's why everyone goes nuts for anything 2012 sitting from, South Australia, because it was just the best vintage that came about in years and years. You walk into as a side note, if you walk into a bottle shop and you see anything 2012 from Barossa Valley or from McLaren, buy it. If it's a red, buy it. It's going to be good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Unless they're like really bad winemakers. But, just as a little tidbit, buy it.
I appreciate the advice.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like you say, terroir, that's not the only predisposing factor. It's everything. Like what side? Is it an east-facing hill? Is it is it right near the coast? Does it have a sea breeze going through? Like just everything makes a difference, and people sort of don't understand the difference in between a wine and a spirit. They think, oh yeah, okay, so it's all sort of much of a muchness. Like it's not. Wine is terrifyingly difficult, and you know, and if you get a bad vintage, well, I mean, that's it. You know, there's not as much regulation as you can actually get with things like spirits, and I have an insane amount of appreciation for what distillers do. Like, you know, obviously, given what I do for work at the moment, you know, I love it. But at the same time, because I've just had so much experience with wine, I've made wine and everything like that as well, you know, what goes into that is just ridiculous.
It's crazy the depth that the wine world has.
Yeah.
And this is just one aspect of, you know, this massive industry that we just cover snippets on.
Yeah.
And I love exploring these sorts of things. So thank you for these sorts of insights.
No,
It's
totally
really awesome.
fine.
I have a fun little question that I've asked on the show before. Quick one.
Yeah.
How do you prevent wine lips?
How do I prevent what?
Wine lips. Like stained wine lips. That's what I want to know.
Some people get it worse than others. I'm terrible for it. My keys,
You can put lipstick
Yeah, no,
back
that's
on.
what I do. I put lipstick on.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But I can't as a dude. How do I fix this problem?
No one's stopping you. Like, no one's telling
Just
you not
put
to.
lipstick on.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Alright.
It's you know, do you want wine lips? You want to keep drinking wine?
I would rather have lipstick on than have wine lips.
What about a
so there you go.
chapstick?
Chapstick.
Just like, you know, that purple ointment?
Mm-hmm.
It's still got a
fix it?
covering. It's still got a covering on your lips. And I mean, the whole thing is that it's going to be absorbing into the actual, you know, the skin on your lips. So I mean, if you've got something covering it, technically, it should work.
I
Or
appreciate
you know,
that.
do what I do. I've only started drinking red again recently out because I get red wine teeth.
Yes.
It's horrible, and you smile like, oh, I shouldn't be smiling right now. So I actually went through a period when I would only drink white and rosé out.
Yeah.
Whereas I just don't care anymore. I'm like, no, if I want to drink red wine, I want to drink red wine.
Yes. Because the advice I was given was drink a lighter red.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I want to drink heavier reds.
I know, but yeah, honestly, a chapstick or something like that, as long
Yeah.
as there's some form of like waxy film
Yeah.
on your lips, you should be able to get past it. I mean, unless
Awesome.
you're sort of like reapplying every single sip, that's a little bit excessive.
Just like constantly putting it on in the
Yeah.
bar. Like people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no,
Um,
but that would be my advice. My advice is something like a chapstick. For guys, for ladies,
you.
just wear a red lipstick.
Yeah.
You'll
yeah.
never know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
No, that's okay.
The next question I want to ask you is about any innovations or innovative techniques that you've seen in the industry while you've been working in it. This can be in wine or in the bar scene or whatever comes to mind to you, innovative techniques or innovations.
Sort of in the last couple of years, in terms of winemaking, they've actually started developing a lot of technology which does make it a lot easier to determine when the grapes are ready to be picked. So these are looking at things like your sugar levels, so your optimum sugar levels for what the winemakers are actually after. They're becoming a lot more proficient as well in the regulation of what they're doing. But this is, if you look at, again, it always goes back to old world versus new world. Their old world are very restricted in what they can and can't do, whereas new world, we can bastardize wine as much as we want to, really, so we have the ability to explore a lot of new technologies and everything as well. So it's sort of getting more proficient with your picking and everything like that, just to make sure that, you know, you're not bruising grapes and things like that as well. In terms of bar techniques, I mean, one of the best things, it's been around for a little while, but I mean, your best friend in a wine bar, and especially one that stocks old wine, is going to be a coravin. So a coravin is a device that you use that has, best way to describe it, it's going to be like a needle that actually goes, a hollow needle that goes down into the cork that sits on top, that you actually use to then pour this old wine out. What it does then, depending on what, it'll actually replace the oxygen then in the bottle with another gas that's got a lower density than oxygen, so
Nice.
it's actually going to prevent that oxidation process.
Yes.
So it means that you can actually keep your older wine for longer.
Awesome.
I've actually been told, be really careful about how much you pump this damn thing too much, because you've got to keep in mind here that you're actually pulling pressure out.
Yes.
So you could actually make the thing implode.
Oh, whoa.
I actually kind of want to do it just to see what would happen under a controlled environment,
Need a
of course.
Mythbusters episode on that one.
Oh, it'd be great. I wonder if I could write to them about that.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of your your best friend with old wine. That's the best thing that I've seen. They are quite pricey though. Yeah, but very, very cool.
A Coravin.
Coravins are fantastic little devices. They are very expensive, but very much worth investing in if you do drink a lot of old wine, and if you're one of the people that cracks open a bottle and doesn't quite drink it all in one go. I'm personally not friends with these people, but they do exist.
I know one listener who will be very keen to buy a Coravin after hearing you say that.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to go out and buy one.
Yeah.
I want to ask you next, what changes do you want to see take place in the industry?
Less Marlboro Sauvignon Blanc drinkers.
Yeah.
Not personally privy to the good old Savvy Bee.
Yep.
It's not my thing.
What should they drink instead?
Anything. Sorry, it's one of those things that's always a bit of a sore point, just because there's always going to be... I'm trying not to be really negative about this, but it's really hard not to be, because it drives me insane. It's when you get these bloggers, you get people who seem to think that, good on them for having experience in wine, but then they start writing their own recommendations, these star recommendations of what this is, what this is, what this is. That's for their own personal taste. I think with wine, I would love to see people experiencing new varietals, and we're lucky enough that we're finally seeing more of that come into Australia. We're even seeing more winemakers, and this is something that's massive down the Barossa Valley at the moment. They're importing all these really, really weird, quirky varietals. There's a fantastic vineyard down in McLaren Vale that have actually started importing a Menthia grape. And they were the first vineyard in Australia to import this particular grape. So it's a red grape varietal, but makes amazing rosé as well. And I was lucky enough that I was down there at the end of last year and just happened to, as you do in McLaren Valley, you just wander into a few wineries. I'm like, never had this before. And a lot of Australian winemakers are now starting to attempt their overseas grapes. But I would just love to see people exploring new things, grab a Grenache instead of a straight Grenache instead of a Pinot Noir. Get something different aside from, your really oaky Chardonnay. There are more things out there in terms of your white and red varietals that you can drink. I'm stoked to see that everyone's drinking more rosé, which is amazing, because rosé is fantastic. But just try something new. Most bartenders are going to be able to recommend and tell you exactly what everything there tastes like. Just go for something new. When you go to the bottle shop, stop reaching for things like pepper jack. Just stop. Go for something new. Go for something you've never had before. It's half the fun of it. And again, speak to people who work there. They're usually going to have a good idea and make fantastic recommendations.
What's a good price range as well for a bottle of wine? Just to buy a bottle of wine.
There is no good price range. You can spend a couple $100 on a bottle of wine and have it be absolute crap, and I have had that happen, but then my favourite bottle on the face of the planet is $20, and it is just, again, for everyone who knows me will know that I just harp on and on and on about Cirillo because they're amazing, but that is my favourite bottle of wine on the face of the planet, is the Cirillo 2011 Grenache Rosé. $20 bottle, and just, my God, I would drink that every single day of the week if I could. Yeah.
You definitely should.
Yeah, it's the best thing that you ever find is an amazing bottle that costs you under $20. Happens all the time. It doesn't need to be an expensive bottle. Of course, if you're going to buy things like, Burgundy and everything like that, they're going to be more pricey. And they're delicious, but look, not all of us have the availability to spend 3 figures on a bottle every time we do.
Yeah.
And so it's just nice to find something that's just short, sharp, simple, everyday drinking wine. It's great, and you'll feel better if you have a glass of wine every day. Let's be honest.
It's good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Helps you live longer.
It's a serve of fruit, right?
Yeah, that's right. I like to think so. Yeah. How many grapes go into a bottle of wine? Actually, this is a good question.
Ooh. I couldn't tell. Exactly how many grapes?
Well, obviously, your yield's going to be different.
Yeah.
But this is just a crazy question off the top of my head. I wonder...
Again, it depends. You couldn't really get an exact answer here. Again, with like I said before about, did it rain before vintage? Is it diluted? Because that's going to make an effect on the size of grapes as well. Some grapes have, some are bigger than others. Some have thicker skins than others. It's how long's a piece of string, really.
Someone said to me, so I like my big heavy reds. Someone said to me that I just haven't matured my taste yet, and that the medium body is where it's at. But you like you're very confused as it is.
No,
You're like,
but no, it's
just drink what you like.
Yeah, just drink what you like. I mean, again, that's why things like Moscato exist.
Yes.
It's because people like to drink it.
Yeah.
I mean, just because it's not my cup of tea, and I should probably retract my statement before about the Marlborough Sav, but that's from running a wine bar for far too many years.
It's the nature of it.
That's exactly it. If there is a market for it, they're going to make it. People are going to drink it. It's why we have espresso martinis. There's a market for it. People are going to drink it. But again, trends will shift. People's, from what they are told that they should be drinking, their tastes will change. Best example there, look at the transition from vodka drinkers to gin drinkers. Because all of a sudden gin was this massive thing. People started drinking gin. Something like Beaujolais is coming into trend now because we're starting to hear more about it in Australia, and people are sort of discovering, oh my god, this is actually a fantastic substitute for Pinot Noir. This is something, whilst again flavour profiles are different, it's still something lovely, light, really fruity, gorgeous colour, and it's just a beautiful wine. I mean, as I guess what I like to drink. But trends change. It's just how it is.
That's sort of, the answer there sort of leads me into my next question, which is, I want to ask what your number one industry resource is, but the question that came up in that is sort of is very related, and it's that I'd like to know how you stay on the pulse of what is happening in the wine industry. What are the sorts of resources to absorb? Obviously, you're doing a lot of study. If someone isn't studying, what can they read up on or explore to stay on the pulse of what's happening in wine?
I mean, if you really sort of want to follow what's trending, you do need to look at the people that are wine reviewers. So you need to look at people like James Halliday. Whilst he's been around for years, you can trace back his books for years and years. But he will generally, from what I found, give high ratings of things that will then start to trend because he is so well known. It means whatever he rates as being a high thing, it's going to start trending then as well. But in terms of trends, let's look at what people are bringing into Australia. Let's look at what you're starting to see more and more of in bottle shops. I mean, here we're always going to have things, like it's always going to be Chardonnay and Shiraz here because that's what we grow. It's what's easily accessible for us. I personally stay on top of things not only from my study, but because I speak to so many people in the industry. I see, when I walk into bars, I can see which particular brands are trending as well. Or, you can see which reps really doing their job well. Because you'll start to see particular bottles pop up in more and more venues. And so that gives you a really good indication as to where people are actually switching to. But, I mean, don't drink what's just trending. Try everything. It's wine is such a huge thing. Like, you need to try everything. Yeah.
And it's impossible to try everything.
Not with it. With that, no. It is with that attitude, but I mean.
Okay, I'll have more positivity about drinking all the wine.
Yes.
Let's drink it all. And so, what's your best industry resource that you've had over your time in the industry?
That's actually a really hard one. Because mine actually was when I was running a wine bar. Mine was the reps that were coming in, because what you would find is that reps would come in with particular varietals, particular stylings. You could tell that these were coming more and more into fashion, and so it was, at the moment, it's lighter varietals of red, it's drier whites, because more and more of these were being influxed into the market, and so that's sort of where I kind of gauge, okay, so this is where people are going. But I mean, if I'm being really honest here, it was what people were asking me for over the bar. You could tell what was in trend at the time because, more and more people are asking for this particular style of wine, and so it's a pretty good indication straight off the bat there. But for me, it's easier because I subscribe, to so many magazines, so all of these different resources where I can get it from. So, Wine Selector and things like that are always a good place to start because they're always going to give you, like, this is the up and coming thing at the moment, this is what Aria and Sydney's stocking, it's what Rockpool's stocking. It sort of gives you a really good idea.
Can you predict how long a trend's going to last, or how big that wave's going to be, or
not
any
at all.
of these sorts of things? No.
Not at all. You can start to see something peter off, but as to how long the trend's going to ride, no idea. It really depends on how long people stay interested for. Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who has a passion for the industry? Maybe they're a bit younger and they want to explore and learn more about hospitality and sort of understand what's available in the industry. What advice do you have for those sorts of people?
make friends with bartenders. Become regulars at a bar. I mean, I'm not actively encouraging people to drink themselves under the table. There's, appreciation for what you're drinking. But half the reason that a lot of people in this industry are here is because they're passionate. So find your best bars around, where you're living. And any internet listing is going to be able to give you a good idea. But as soon as you start to become regulars in these bars, people will just talk. And they do. And that's how we all find out what's going on. That's how so many of us actually came into the industry, is because we made friends with people that were over the bar. And the industry is tiny. Even across Australia, it is tiny. Everyone knows everyone. And as soon as you become a part of that accumulative family, you learn everything. You see who's winning, the competitions, who are the newest distillers, what is coming into Australia, who now runs this, who does this. Like, you just need to make friends with people in the industry. And they're not bad people. They're lovely. It's the amount of community that you get in Brisbane is nothing short of insane. I can't walk into a venue now without actually seeing anyone, which is always really, really lovely.
For our listeners who aren't in the industry, I kind of liken it to every city is like an office, and it's like other people in the office are just people at their other areas are just bars around. They're just other people who work in the same office.
Yep. Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. You've got different styles of bars, of course. So, the nightclub bartenders are going to know all the nightclub bartenders. The cocktail bartenders are going to know all the cocktail bartenders. But if you're in the industry for long enough, you just know everyone. It doesn't matter where you go. You just know everyone. And I've figured out that takes exactly 2.5 years for you to just know everyone. And I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. It's lovely to be able to see everyone, but at the same time, if you just sort of go to a quiet drink somewhere, it's like, oh, crap. I can't go anywhere. Yeah.
Oh, 2.5 years. So that's it. Anyone who wants to get into the industry, 2.5 years, you can go from knowing no one to knowing everybody.
Everyone. I know people that have done it in shorter amounts of time, and it's very much who you sort of start knowing in the industry as well, which I think is a massive thing, which I figured out firsthand.
But how do you pick that? Because, like, I'm good at going to a new city and meeting lots of people in the industry, but how do you do it? What would you do?
Oh, well, for me, it was dumb luck. Pure and utter dumb luck, actually meeting my current partner and being very, very drunk and walking into Press Club one evening and then meeting him there, and then I blame him entirely.
I thought that maybe you were going to tell us more from the Cloudland story, that he would come up with the Cloudland story in some way, being in a close proximity to that venue.
Oh, he's actually how I got hired there.
There you go.
He was the venue manager of Press Club at the time, and he's actually how I got hired.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it was solely from meeting him, and because he is so well known around Brisbane that I just met everyone. Yeah. And here I am. I blame him entirely, and I think my parents do, because I didn't continue with my uni degree.
Oh, you're crushing it in your own right. Like,
don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing. I don't regret any of it at all. It's, for someone who was so introverted for so many years, to then just be accepted into this type of community has been lovely. And it's just been fantastic. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And maybe until I get old and, get diagnosed with cirrhosis. Until that point in time.
Well, keep it light. But my next question is actually about a challenge. What's your biggest challenge at the moment?
Biggest challenge for me was switching from running venues to being on the other end. So after I left Grape Therapy, I'm currently the Queensland manager for Vanguard Luxury Brands. So I'm a rep. So it was going from one side of the bar to the other. So moving into that sales role was the biggest challenge for me, because it was a bit easier for me because I know so many people, but at the same time it's being able to approach them from that different light. So when you walk in and when I see someone now, it's not just going in, for a casual chat, hey, how you doing, everything like that. It's going in there for business, and it's being able to differentiate, just going in and seeing someone to then going in like, no, we actually need to talk business at the moment. And that is my biggest challenge. I'm settling in easy enough, but for me personally, that's the biggest thing, because it's a lot more tiring. Actually, running a venue was difficult, but this is just completely different. It's the other end of the spectrum while still being within the industry. And people don't sort of understand. They think, oh yeah, being a rep is really easy. Look, it's fun, but it's by no means easy, because you've got to really, people don't understand that you need to decipher between being friends and work. And so it's very, very different. But yeah, that's probably it at the moment. Is my biggest challenge would be that.
Because I find sales is a mentality shift. And there's a lot of skills that I think hospitality teaches a lot of awesome skills for sales. But having said that, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to learn more about sales, particularly within the sort of the customer facing end of the industry. There's a lot of training and systems and processes that are in place. I had a chat in the last episode with Sean Forsyth about those sorts of things that take place within those companies. But I think that there is opportunity for actually in bars to teach more about sales.
Absolutely, but I mean that ties into customer service. If you have fantastic customer service, and again that is something that is taught in bars very much, because that's, what is the meaning of hospitality? If you have good customer service, chances are you're actually going to be very good at sales as well. It's being able to be flirtatious without not being flirtatious, if you get what I mean. It's being able to make whoever you are speaking to just feel fantastic. And when you're in a bar, people are coming out to see you, to have a good time, and you're part of their experience. And the thing is that then moving over to what I'm doing now, that's the start of it. So you're actually giving these bars the products, the knowledge, the enthusiasm to go in and then, resell and then make someone else's evening. Like before we did this now, I was doing a staff training with another venue. And the whole idea isn't for me to give them, here's all this technical knowledge about these products. I'm like, no, I want you guys to get excited about this product. So when you turn and you look at your back bar, you're going to pick this off, and I'm going to give you some really stupid fact about this particular distillery, or just something weird and quirky that is going to sit in your mind. So then you can then turn and you can actually give this to the customer. So obviously, it's fantastic for me because you're selling my products. But then you're also helping the experience of this person that has come to see you to have a great night out. Like it all ties in together, and people I don't think people realize the chain that actually goes through there. One thing feeds directly off of another. So, if I'm really grumpy, or I'm a horrible salesperson and I'm going in, I don't really give a crap about what I'm doing, and I've got this particular product, that person's going to remember that. So if a person comes in and they ask for that specifically off the back bar, immediately in the person's head, whilst it may not be conscious, there's always going to be that connection there of, oh yeah, this is what happened, okay. And then immediately you can get a temper change, and then that's again going to traverse over to the person that you're serving across the bar. So people don't sort of realize how much that's all interconnected as well.
Yes.
So, but it really ties into customer service, and I would love to see Brisbane. There's some people in Brisbane that I look up to and will always look up to with customer service, because they just go above and beyond.
Do you want to say who those people are?
James Hughes, without a doubt. So sad to see him move overseas.
Yeah. In
But
Singapore with Rob Scott, who is actually going to be coming up on another episode.
Amazing. But in terms of customer service, that man has just always blown me away. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for just seeing it didn't matter who walked into that bar, because I saw him I met him initially when he was at the Bowery, then when he moved over to Gresham.
Me too, met him at Bowery.
Didn't matter who he was talking to. He treated every single person exactly the same.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful thing to see, and it's just so rare to see someone like that. And unfortunately, I hope I don't piss too many people off by me saying this, but there's just a cockiness, unfortunately, that is surrounded with cocktail bartending at the moment. And whilst, look, by no means am I saying all bartenders have this, but unfortunately some do. And it's, just enjoy your job, guys. If you don't like your job, do something else. But, you're part, again, of this entire experience. You're part of this customer service. And it's kind of where it all stems from, really.
Well, I totally agree, and that's you made some really awesome, honest comments there, and I really appreciate that.
To be really blunt,
I don't think it'll piss anyone off. And I think it's true.
Yeah.
What plans do you have for the industry and how you want to contribute over your career?
I want to again contribute to that customer service aspect. For anyone who's ever seen me host a tasting, wine tastings, gin tastings, they know that I'm very passionate and I'm very excitable when it comes to things like that, because I love what I do, and I want to get other people excited in that way as well. I want other people then to be able to get excited when they're serving people, and I want people to then broaden their horizons and not just, just go in, do their job day by day. And look, some people want to do that, that's fine, but show some interest in what you're doing, have the drive, want to learn more. I just want to get people more excited and learning more about the industry, and then becoming more passionate about it as well. It doesn't matter if you're studying something else at uni, this is what you're doing now. I want people to really have that drive and to just, it's all about passion. That's what I want to see people doing, and it's why I love hosting things like tastings, masterclasses, things like that, because I want to traverse that over to other people so then they get excited about it too.
Yes.
Because then it makes everyone a little bit more excited about the industry and willing to learn more.
Yeah.
I just want to see people I want people to learn more, so then everyone broadens their horizons, so everyone can, with wine, like I was saying before, reach for that weird bottle, reach for that thing that you have never heard of before. It might be terrible, but you tried it, and that's the whole thing. Is just want people to learn more. Yeah,
I'm totally with you, and that's everything that the show's about as well. So I totally think that our whys are aligned.
yeah.
So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. My next and final question for you, Carmen, is what's next for Carmen Hartwich?
A nap. I don't know. I sit my level 3 next year, but at the same time, who I'm working for at the moment are just the best people I've ever worked for in my life. And they are just throwing everything at me at the moment. It's like, cool, so they're sending me to Mexico next year, and so I'm getting so much more involved with this company and this side of things as well, and I'm finding that I am loving it. And again, had you spoken to me a year ago, I never would have thought that I would have been a rep. This position came up and I was just like, I can't say no. Who would say no to working for 4 Pillars? Come on, that is just ridiculous. But and here I am now, and I don't know, but that's half the fun. It's the best part about it, is that I have no idea what's coming up. But again, as long as I'm happy, I don't care. Yeah, I can become a basket weaver for all I know, but as long as I'm happy, it doesn't matter. I do not care otherwise.
I think it's really important to have that openness to exploration.
Absolutely.
And you're obviously really open to exploring and just following your passion, which is 100% what I'm about as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been a great guest on the show today,
Thank
Carmen,
you.
so thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Stay in touch with the show after hours at Hospopreneurs on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Do you know a hospopreneur? Shoot us an email, hospopreneurs@gmail.com. Creativity and innovation in hospitality. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.